with Max Olson, who joins us now live from theathletic.com, and a week for him, who's in full throttle when it comes to the transfer portal. Max, so far, would you say it's kind of like a light sprinkle rather than any kind of like thunderstorms the first week, and maybe we'll stay that way until after spring games or the end of spring at the end of the weekend?
Yeah, I think that's right. I think it's let's extend the analogy. It's raining, but I wouldn't say it's storming right now. There's been, by my count, I think more than 350 scholarship players at the FBS level who've gone in the portal this week. Obviously, a big number on Tuesday, 230 of them, which was a big uptick from last year, which was 90 on the first day. But in terms of like guys who are all conference, all America type players, like huge impact players, haven't seen a ton of those pop up yet. I think as we get closer to the April 30th deadline, that probably spurs a little bit more action if there are going to be some big names that make moves. Certainly, like as you guys probably noted, after spring games, you probably see a little bit more action on Mondays and Sundays. But it hasn't been, I don't think, too crazy so far.
Max, it looks to me like outside of, you listed 10 guys that are going to go in and be starters, and there might be maybe 15 to 20 that could go in and be starters at power conference programs, but this spring portal so far looks like a lot of maybe depth pieces or developmental guys so far. Yeah,
and I think that, this time last year, Colorado, obviously, they cut 20 guys after the spring game. A lot of guys moved on and stuff, and that was like all very surprising and horrifying or whatever. But the reality is like all these programs are kind of doing this post spring. You're having exit meetings. These coaches are kind of telling players like, hey, don't know how much you're going to play this fall. Don't know if we've got a role for you. You might want to go in the portal. So, I'm not saying that's the case for all 300 guys that are in the portal right now from the spring period. But, I do think there are a lot of players that are, as I look at them and kind of look at their bios when they pop up, it's a lot of backups, a lot of guys that haven't played much yet. It's a lot of guys lately who have been to multiple schools now and have not played very much. And so, I think that's kind of the case now of teams, trying to get to 85 and, just kind of maybe encouraging these guys that aren't getting on the field to, maybe move down if they want to get more playing time. So, I think you see a ton of that right now.
For what it's worth, Max had a great portal recap after day number 1 over on The Athletic, where you kind of broke it down, the number of time or the number of repeat transfers in the portal. You mentioned Damen Martinez among some various others, and so that's a good read. But Damen Martinez, how attractive of a name has he been in the portal thus far? It seems like Miami's after him and some others as well, but I know that was a huge blow for the Oregon State faithful, who are hoping, after he said he was going to be back, that was going to be the case. But clearly, I imagine there were some people in his ear for his services.
Yeah, no doubt. He's had a really impressive career so far. A kid that went from Texas up to Oregon State and not only started right away, but was a first-team All Pac-12 player in both of his seasons at Oregon State. Really productive and someone who, when you stack 2 seasons like that, now you start kind of thinking, okay, what do I need to do to be, one of the first running backs selected in next year's draft? So I think that's, I know the 400,000 thing got floated out there when he went, when it was announced and all that. And I think that, changed the conversation a lot around him. But I think that's the reality here. He's looking to play for a program that can contend and to boost his stock. And, I think that the one to watch right now, I think, is still Miami. Because they've got Cam Ward, they've got good receivers, they've got good talent there, and obviously they've got a little pressure to put together a much better season than they've had so far under Mario Cristobal. So I could see Miami being a great fit for him, and they're also dealing with some injuries at running back and have throughout the spring. So I think they're the favorite, but he's currently on a visit to Arizona, and I think he's going to take 4 visits or so, and that'll get wrapped up pretty quick here. But he's definitely number 1 in terms of best available at the moment.
Max, 2 of the names, the bigger names that were additions for Colorado last year was obviously Cormani McClain, because of coming out of high school, is ranked as high as anyone could be. And then, of course, even Alton McCaskill, who he is also now in the portal, along with Cormani, who made that at least was reported yesterday. Is this going to still take another year or 2 or 3 with Deion churning the roster? Because he'll fill it up. But do you think he'll ever get to a point where he doesn't rely as much on that year to year?
Well, I think the first full recruiting class, I'm not saying that that's like damning in terms of how they'll always do things there, but certainly other than Jordan Seaton, they really did not. They took a very minimal number of high school recruits. And, look, I think part of it is like an overall strategy of they're trying to get as good as possible, as fast as possible, because, they feel like they've got a first-round quarterback in Shedeur Sanders, and they've got Travis Hunter, and these guys are going to go pro a year from now, you would think. And so I think part of it is just trying to expedite this rebuild and get experienced players in there. But, certainly the players that are hitting the portal right now and whenever Cormani McClain's officially in, I believe that'll be 26 or 27 players that have entered the portal for Colorado since the season ended. I think you're seeing a lot of these guys that are going in are guys that didn't play as much or kind of backups, and guys that, frankly, Colorado probably missed on. And so, as they fill those spots with more portal guys, it's like you got to have a better hit rate this time in terms of finding players that really can help them, be a bowl team and better than that, right? So, and then the McClain one, I mean, McCaskill, I think he was coming off the ACL, so it clearly wasn't 100% when the season started. They decided to go the red shirt route. You just hope that he got paid whatever he was promised when he made that decision to leave Houston, and you hope he can get back to 100% and get back to playing like the player we saw in 2021. And then for McClain, I think, Deion Sanders has been very transparent, very public about, what's gone on there. I think that he really poured a lot into Cormani McClain. It was very important to get him to Colorado. And, this is a kid that just made a lot of freshman mistakes in terms of his work ethic and preparation and all that. And you hope that wherever he's going next, he kind of takes that opportunity seriously, because, even though we're going to have unlimited transfers here going forward, you don't get unlimited opportunities to like be a starter and a guy at these places. So don't know where he's going to go next, but you hope it's a little bit of a wake up call for the young man.
What happened with Penny Boon in Louisville?
Great question. Yeah, great question. He's one that if you asked me 2 weeks ago, I would have said, that's one of like the sleeper pickups that I'm excited about. I think Louisville has been very aggressive in the portal this offseason. In terms of reloading after playing for an ACC title in Jeff Brom's first year. And they took a lot of guys in December, January, and Penny Boon is coming off an excellent season at Toledo, where he was the MAC Offensive Player of the Year. And, I think we've seen a few examples of that so far this spring, of a guy goes to a place in January, and then as this deadline comes up, they're looking for a renegotiation, and sometimes the coaching staff puts up with that, and sometimes they don't. And so, I'd be very curious to see where he goes. But I think there's a larger kind of challenge there, and I've talked about this with head coaches before. I think because there's the two windows now, it gets very frustrating on the roster management side for these coaches, because you're not really signing them for a year. You're really kind of signing them for 6 months at a time right now. And so, we've seen a few cases with Louisville this week of like, okay, you just brought this guy in. Why are there suddenly rumors that they're looking to leave already? And so, we're curious to see what happened with Penny Boon in terms of like where he goes. Can he be as productive at the Power 5 level as he was in the MAC? But it's you can't take it for granted in terms of these guys showing up at a place and staying.
If you wanted to slap the elite or the premium tag or the X tag or whatever on a position group, it sure seems like defensive linemen, defensive tackles would be right there near the top of everybody's want list, Max, but it's always near sold out. So there was a major splash when Dominic Williams announced that he was going to be leaving TCU. What kind of a ripple effect do you think is there? Obviously a huge loss for Sonny Dykes and company, but what are we talking about as far as the demand for a Dominic Williams now in the portal?
Yeah, I mean, it's probably pretty expensive to pick up the Dominic Williams in the portal these days. I think that, and look, again, that's like kind of the shame in this stuff, is that TCU, was able to take him out of California as a 3-star recruit, and by my understanding, he was making good money at TCU. That wasn't necessarily the issue here, but this is a guy that earned a starting spot day one as a true freshman, and started every game of his career at nose tackle, and showed a ton of value for that TCU defense. Even with its struggles last year. And so, I think a player like that, again, you're looking at the NFL now, you're looking at, okay, what do I have to do to kind of boost my stock? I think if he'd stayed put, though, the fact that the TCU is changing their defensive front and playing four-man and stuff. Like, I think Dominic Williams, if he'd stayed put, would have had more pass rush opportunities in a different role and maybe a beneficial role in terms of proving what kind of draft prospect he is. So I was surprised by that news when it broke yesterday. And, I think that he's the kind of player, I mean, when those guys go in, it's not really that surprising when, like, soon after it's like, oh, he's going to visit Oklahoma. Oh, he's going to go visit Texas. So, like, the real contenders, when they play TCU, I'm sure they circle that guy on the depth chart and are like, hey, we'd take him if he ever went in. So, I think he'll land in a great spot here. And I think for TCU, they're going to have to pick some guys up.
Max, do you have an under-the-radar guy that you like a lot?
Ooh, good question. There's, I think you're right that defensive tackle position is there's a lot of people looking for him. There's not a lot of them out there. So, I think we've seen C.J. West, the defensive tackle from Kent State, who graded out as one of the best deep tackles in the MAC in the country last season. He's a guy that went in, and when these guys go in and there just aren't that many options at the position, like all of a sudden, okay, this kid from Kent State has a Michigan offer and a Texas A&M offer and Miami and all these schools. So maybe they get over-recruited a little bit, but that's one that certainly you talk to personnel people, that's one that they circled right away on Tuesday is like, we got to offer this kid and get him on campus. So, you tend to see that in the spring window, maybe a little bit more than in the January one, that these G5 guys who can really play and they go in, they get some pretty good opportunities. So I think he's one. And, that's also kind of how this cycle's been so far. There's not like starting QBs going in, making moves and stuff like that. So it is a lot of like need-based recruiting, and it is, can you find some gems right now?
Max, I know that for a lot of people covering college football, the spring practices and game was always nice because it was just a little bit of football while we had to wait for the real action months later, and it's a good opportunity to maybe learn a few things here and there. Not the most important event in the world, of course, but it does feel like we're just not even, at least us, not even paying as much attention or even realizing as much of it's going on as we would have maybe a couple of years ago. I attribute some of that to the portal, but do you get that sense as well? Not that it's lost importance, but that it's just gotten lost in the shuffle of all the other news that's out there these days?
Yeah, I think that's right. And it's funny. I've talked to a few people on the personnel side in the past week who are like, yeah, I kind of wish we were doing our spring game like in May, so that way our guys aren't leaving.
Yeah.
That I think it's I think it has definitely lost some importance in the last few years. I think part of that is the roster attrition piece of it, and just that. You talk to some coaches and like it is hard to have like the right numbers at all these positions and go through spring ball and really feel like you got a ton out of it when guys are coming off season surgeries and things like that. And so, yeah, I think it's been diminished a little bit. I think you're also seeing that these coaches are getting more aware of like, our opponents are already scouting our roster and like probably trying to like poach our players. So why do we want to put anything out there in the public about who's good? You know what I mean?
Great point, yeah.
I think that you're seeing strategically. It's obviously in the past it was like, well, we're not going to really show off what we're really doing on offense and defense. It was in the past it was like a scheme thing that you want to be vanilla and all that. And now I think it's also like I don't really want people getting a good look at my personnel here. So yeah, you kind of wonder if that will continue to be. They're fun events, but I mean, will that continue to like matter very much going forward?
There was the Super League leak, a couple of weeks ago, and that kind of came and went in a couple of days' time, basically. I know there was another thing that came out, a couple of days ago about another confidential turnkey pitch that was out there for the Super League. How are you digesting this? Because the first one, I think everybody's like, oh, wow, and then realized, well, this is not happening and moved on quickly. How are you kind of taking some of these quote-unquote leaks and this Super League talk that's been out there the last month or so?
Yeah, I think it's, the fact that the league's locked in the TV deal with the playoffs, in the past few months here, that's like the door closing on this stuff. Like, they're all locked into these deals now, and so this is not like some imminent threat. This is about to happen, and I hope people like understand that this is certainly way more theoretical at this time. I think to me it's like I think the things that are like that they're putting out there, they're all the conversations we have to be having about like what is the future of college football, and like if you start from a standpoint of like, okay, we need to stop with having these antitrust problems. We need to figure out a way to have a collective bargaining model for athletes. We need to have a model where we are directly paying the athletes. Like, okay, so what does that look like? How does that work? Like, I think them trying to attack those issues makes sense, and I think that's productive to like have those conversations and try to work those things out. And that probably gets obscured a little bit by, okay, well, look at these divisions they came up with. These are stupid. Who would do this, right? Like, I think it's easy to look at some of those things and be like, yeah, this is not going to work or this is not going to happen soon. But I think there's probably some merit to some of the ideas they're putting out there, and it's not just about conference alignment and stuff like that or playoff structure. But at the same time, you look at what they came up with on paper there in terms of divisions, and I think it's very easy to see it and be like, okay, well. Not sure why Greg Sankey and Tony Petitti would be stoked about that.
Yeah.
I mean, their job is to protect and grow the brand of their conferences, and those are extremely strong brands at the moment. So just kind of disappearing those, that's probably not what they're looking to do, and that's it's one of the many reasons why these guys are not taking meetings with the group that is working on this project. So. I think that there's probably some merit to some of the ideas there, and these are the issues we'll be talking about for the next few years. But certainly there's not just one kind of. I think there's from like the Big Ten SEC side, they're sort of like, wait, why are these guys the ones trying to step in and fix this? So that debate over what is the right thing to do here going forward, I think is it's an important.
I saw your response about the one that was called the Southwest. That's not going to happen. Secondly. Why would Texas go back into what was partly the old Southwest Conference where they're trying to run as fast as they can to get away from that /Big 8? So, yeah. By the way, I can give you a real quote.
Yeah, who's doing those things voluntarily, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Nobody.
We just got to the SEC. Let's turn around and go reform the Southwest Conference. Yeah,
Here,
I don't know.
I'm going to give you a quote to close it out. Deion Sanders asked about Colorado losing players in the portal. What are we losing? Potential starters. Where? Tight end, running back. You haven't been watching practice, huh? We good. I trust the recruiting team and our coaches. So that was his response today.
The recruiting team of his sons, Shiloh and Shador, apparently.
Yes, player development and general managers. Max, thank you very much for your time, man. We appreciate it as always. Good luck covering this
thanks, guys.
as you go. That's Max Olson, theathletic.com.
Yeah, I mean, that's a fair point by Deion.